Welcome to Reward Nerds, the podcast that deep dives into the areas of compensation and benefits. My name is Jon, and I'm your host, and I'm your fellow Reward Nerd. Welcome to Reward Nerds. This episode, we're going to be talking to Keld Nielsen, one of the grand old men of rewards, at least in Denmark and in the Nordics. Been doing this for 25 years now, both with the consultancy at first, where we actually met around 25 years ago. And now he's with Novo Nordisk, one of the biggest and most valuable companies in Europe. And we're going to talk about the journey of Novo Nordisk in terms of how they're doing stuff in rewards. And now we're recording here in April 2025, and on April 1st, they actually launched externally that they internally had Pay Transparency. So that is super exciting, plenty of reactions on that, and we're going to be talking about that. So welcome, Keld.
Thank you very much, Jon.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here, and good to see you again. As you said, we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
So you started building up the Norway market, and I was building up the Denmark market in Mercer back in the 21 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was pretty amazing, and I think you actually taught me the basics of comp and ben. So if I do anything wrong now, that's on you.
Yeah, it is.
So that's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And in many ways, so we started, 2004 we actually concluded there. And I think the first few months I worked in your team as well to understand the basics of stuff for 8-9 months or something. And then I started the Norwegian market after that.
It was a good time.
It was a good time, yeah. And then 2007, you moved on. Then you say no more. Then taking a small stop to Novo Nordisk that has lasted so far for 18 years.
18 years, yes, and counting. So it's been a long journey, and you can say at that time I've been 7 years with Mercer, doing a lot of consulting business, data business, and so on. And you are part of the project. I actually wanted to get to the customer side as well and go from idea to execution on many projects, and it has been a super interesting journey in Novo Nordisk. That's why I stayed there for a long time, based on interesting task, the purpose of the company, and you can say also the growth we've been in has been super interesting over the years.
Yeah, so if you talk about growth, then when you started, do you remember more or less in terms of size of the company then versus now, etc.?
Yeah, it was about 25,000 employees at that time, maybe a bit less actually, and there were more people in Denmark than outside of Denmark at that point in time. I think the revenue was probably around maybe 60 billion DKK at that time. And now it's 4 or 5 times as high. So it has, and we are around more than 70,000 employees now.
And this has led to seeing news articles, etc., that Novo Nordisk is now the most valuable company in Europe. It seems like you're fighting with LVMH, on the top spot, and I'm guessing that's just the stock market going up and down. And
now it's more down than up. So I think since we reached the top in June last year, we are 60% down from that. So when you are high valued, only a few bad news and a bit of anxiety amongst the investors can take your share price down. But still, it's a.
But I think whatever volatility on that, though, I mean, the point is more, you are one of the most influential companies in Europe, no doubt, based on your size and what you're doing and the growth and everything. And with that comes also a great responsibility, and your influence is typically broader than just the size of the company and share prices. We certainly see, no doubt about that, that is certainly across the Nordics, a lot of companies look toward you. What do you do? And if Novo Nordisk does it, it's probably good. And thereby, you could say the stuff that you do in rewards, and when you announce that, a lot of people will both listen and see what's going on.
Yeah, so of course there's a lot of network companies who are interested in what we do. Now also more and more internationally. But yes, of course we are happy to share some of the bigger highlights and provide input to other companies on our journey. If it doesn't get too detailed, we just discussed a bit on not creating this internal market where a number of companies just share a lot of information, and that kind of becomes the truth of everything. So we will be a bit more cautious about sharing these salary increases and whatever without a third-party provider going forward. But yes, you can say all the principles and our journey and everything, we are happy to share that.
And that's great. And so I've been, we mentioned it just before we started recording here, that, the size of the rewards team that you have, you're not one or two people. I mean, and obviously you're not, given your size, etc. But there are plenty of companies that are both 5,000 and 10,000 employees and maybe 20,000 employees that have 1, 2, or 3 rewards people. You have more.
Yeah. So yes, you can say we are together with mobility, so it's called Total Rewards and Mobility in our organization. And we are about 110 employees currently. And especially the mobility space has grown significantly over the past years because we see more and more international hires because we go into new therapy areas where it's not possible to get all the skills you need from you can say a Danish-based market to research and development and commercial and so on. So of course, that more short-term assignments, more international movements across borders as well. So we kind of created a business model for that to say, okay, based on the increase, how many mobility people do we need? But also, you can say the reward space has grown a bit, and I believe we are probably around 65 in total globally. It's around that level. So based on you can say a global rewards development team who's handling all our global projects. So our annual salary review process and success factors. This Pay Transparency project. It could be a request from the EVPs on some analysis on whether we are fit for the future and all kinds of insights projects as well and so on. And then we have 3 areas of total rewards partnering. So we have non-operations, so all the headquarter functions globally, product manufacturing, R&D, staff areas, which is my old team. I left here before March 1st. And then there's my new team, which is international rewards. So it's all the commercial function, but also local rewards partnering for manufacturing sites outside of Denmark and R&D sites. And then we have a US total rewards team as well. So also handling benefits and all that, which is big in the US market.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just one of the funny reflections with that, and it makes a lot of sense. And you're doing plenty of projects, and you are leading in many areas. But it was just an interesting observation. We're working with the Norwegian market as well quite a bit, and it looks like your team is actually bigger than the total size of all rewards teams in Norway combined. So that's at the very least is very close.
So of course it also provides a bit of a muscle where other companies might need to prioritize some things a bit more to get to the end state of this pay transparency and maybe get some, if there's a budget for it, extra hands in to help all these kind of things that we mostly can deal with internally, but of course we also get external help for reporting or insights or any of these things we need.
Yeah. And so there's one area that when you just mentioned it, I think we should go into at some point. So we'll try to remember it. Both of us will try to remember it. But I think it's just interesting if we can get to it, is because there's within Pay Transparency, there are plenty of ways to tackle this and that and the other. And I've never actually heard anyone come with a firm statement as to how they'll tackle international employees. expat situations, etc. If you just have one or two in a country, you can just call them an exception. But if you have bigger groups and it's a big population, it could be interesting to hear your reflections on that within Pay Transparency. So let's see if we remember to do so. Hopefully we do. But I think it would be great to kind of start with understanding the journey as to, so as we mentioned, April 1st now, you announced, and quite a lot of attention on LinkedIn as well when you posted it. I just saw, 650 or something interactions with it.
That's crazy. That's the biggest post,
biggest post you ever did. And I even both liked it and shared it and everything. So that's probably why.
It's your network. Yeah.
No, but I mean, that's obviously an inspiration for a lot of people. And I think that is what we ought to talk about today in many ways, is a lot of the people listening in and watching do not have the same resources as you do. And they shouldn't sit there and reflect, wow, that's inspirational, but we don't have those kinds of budgets, or we don't have that kind of muscle. So how can we get something out of this discussion in terms of, can we get inspired? So if we could kind of move it towards that and saying, you're doing this because X, Y, and Z. And then some of the principles could hopefully still be applied if you're a 500 employee company as well. So that's just having that in the back of the head. But I think it is also key to understand, how did you get to the point where you can actually become a first mover in this case? You announced this, and I believe it's the first company I've seen that announced it, which is not just a company of 50 people or something, openly. And so could you share what you shared a little bit and how you got to that point?
Yeah, so of course, what I shared was that on April 1st, we went live, of course, with a lot of preparation with internal transparency for all employees globally, with a few exceptions. There are some countries who are either sanctioned or where you can say risk management said that it could become a problem to share everything. But we have you can say all the salary ranges on our local SharePoint sites. So it's not like a Danish employee can go into an Indian salary range, but all Indian employees can see the salary range for their country. And we have all the STI information, short-term incentives, sales incentives, long-term incentives, and benefits also based on SharePoint sites. So everybody can see everything. So it's not like we are hiding everything, that who gets a company car or who gets a higher pension than others, or whatever it could be. And at the same time, for individual employees in our Employee Central, which is a success factor part where we store all our data, in the employee profile, all employees can see the salary range they belong to. So minimum, midpoint, and maximum, and then the range penetration, which is a term we use to define where you're based in the salary range. So 0 is the minimum, 100 is the maximum, and 50 is the midpoint. So all can see that, and then they can see their own STI target, and if they have it, LTI target in the systems. So that is available, and of course, before that, we did a lot of change management with managers, HR partners, and so on, both on how to communicate. So more the understanding and dressing managers to take the discussions also on compensation elements, and what if an employee challenge some of the things and maybe have a low range penetration, and how can they manage that, and compare across as well to see, is it fair, or do I need to do something about it? So this is something we did, and then we communicated all the SharePoint sites and the material available to leaders, often coming from line of business as well. So it's kind of owned not by Total Rewards, but also from line of business, and they buy into it.
And because I think that's one of the biggest concerns we're seeing with the number of companies we talk to is basically the change management piece of this.
Yeah.
people have many people managers, obviously with different levels of skill sets, different communication skills, different attitudes, different whatever, and biases and what have you. And getting them on board is key.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can have ranges, but they will potentially use the ranges in the wrong way. If that's done incorrectly, kind of new problems will occur.
Yeah.
And it seems like that is one of the absolutely key things. I mean, obviously, identifying your size of your issue and rectifying whatever needs to be rectified. But once you've done that, and maybe in the process of doing so, then the whole change management piece is absolutely key.
Yeah, it is. And you can say there was a lot of concern. So you have this, I guess you have in all companies, you have these kind of ambassadors who really believe in it and really want to move forward and push it. Also in general managers and HR, and then you have those who are concerned, and there are quite many who are concerned. And what will this bring? And will it be either push up cost, or will it create a lot of noise, or all these kind of things? I just want to say that now we've been live for 2 weeks at least, and I think the concern is always bigger. I see that in many projects than actually the noise. And so we received a lot of praise. Of course, some managers, there will always be that have, of course, received some challenges and so on. But the noise has been really minimal when you talk to line of business. It has been perceived as a good thing and linked to the purpose of Novo Nordisk and our entire culture. To be open and honest and respectful for our employees. So I think many of the companies maybe listening into this is probably concerned. Many of the senior leaders are concerned, but actually when you do it, the noise is much less than what some would expect from this.
And I think that's key to understand, because we've also been saying for some time that really there should be some sort of proactiveness in what's going on. And we're talking about owning the narrative. And the fact that you communicate this before you're forced to do so means that you do not start with having hundreds and hundreds of requests and questions from employees of saying, why do we not share? Why are we not like XYZ company? When you share the message yourself, you have the time to prepare your managers, you have the time to prepare the story, and it shouldn't sound like you're making a story like a fairy tale. I mean, this is, of course, real data and everything is fine that way around, but it's about still how do you present it? And by being transparent now, of course, there will still be individual issues. Obviously, there will be, and it will always be individuals.
There was before as well.
Exactly, So that doesn't change. There's always going to be this one or two managers that for some reason make a silly decision, and some people are incorrectly paid, and you can't really prove why, and you have to fix it. So that will still happen, but as long as you clearly communicate and link it to the purpose of the company and link it to the culture of the company, and say this is what we've always felt is a key value of the company, and then fix whatever issues that comes when they arise.
But that's actually correct. That this was one thing we looked at, that actually we want to own the narrative, and it's not because of the EU legislation. We believe it's the right thing to do. And you can say the EU legislation can maybe provide some of the push for some of the more conservative leaders. But again, that's only EU, and we are going global. So it is more that it's linked to the purpose. More and more countries are coming in. I think Australia also did something last year where luckily we were in a good shape. But there were maybe more luck. At least we have done a lot of things to close the pay gap. But it could have gone wrong if we hadn't done it. And more countries kind of follow up. So we might as well do it now for everybody than wait and see case by case.
But there's this thing which has been well known for many years, is that I don't know when it started, But Novo Nordisk has always shared kind of a salary, if not ranges, at the very least some midpoints, etc., for the different grades in the company, and people have been able to see it. I'm not sure in every country, but certainly in Denmark.
Yeah, it's mainly been Denmark only. So the change management for Denmark was very little because actually before anything was called Pay Transparency, salary ranges were actually shared with employees on the employee SharePoint site. So back in the mid-90s, I believe that was done, and we had a bit of a strange salary structure where it was kind of a public salary structure with more or less 80% had one salary per one IP level, the Mercer job level methodology. So luckily we changed that to create the salary ranges, but that took some time as well because people got used to it, and a lot of leaders were happy about it. They didn't have to discuss pay with employees and so on. It's just what it is. This is the salary. This is what you get. But now we have this more flexibility, and you can say with the diversification of our business, we just needed also to have it. Because we have so many different skills now in different parts of the country as well, and so on.
And skills is also one of these things a number of companies struggles with. It's an important part of, if you take the directive piece of things. Of course, it's not a global thing in itself, but measuring skills is key officially as well. Do you have a specific setup for that?
So we have a job architecture to guide us, right? So we implemented a job architecture in 2018, and now in 2023 we did an update to be future ready for the future, because our organization had changed so much. So that kind of provides the skill base information, and then we have worked with talent development to also develop some skills anchors and so on in the different groups. It's still in the making, and more for some areas, but not for all. But we do benchmark different skills, and then we have a few different ranges based on what we see in the market data. So we of course have standard ranges for all markets, and then some where we have a markup for some specific skills that cost more in the market. It could also be non-sales, sales differences because the pay mix is different and so on. So typically in most markets we have 2 or 3 salary ranges.
Yeah. And then, so now we remember actually talking about these expats or whatever you would call them in your mobility setup. How do you overall tackle that in a pay transparency setting and versus ranges, etc.?
So we have of course discussed whether it's the home base salary that we should include, or the host, which is a net salary and difficult to put into it. So there are still some difficulties with expats, but currently we have put in the home base salary, because that you can compare to salary ranges. But expats is still a
bit of a question mark.
A bit of a question mark on some of the.
And frankly, so that's how you know how to do it. But I also think there is a bit of a question mark as to how you formally have to do it. I don't think that's been clarified to enough detail anyway. And my own opinion is that is one of these valid exceptions, because it is, it's a different criteria, it's a different group, they have different parameters. But of course, there are gray zones in that too. If they stick around for many years, and then you go from full expat to a local plus to somehow at some point you're just localized. So there are of course gray zones, but the traditional expat I feel is a completely different setup than a local, and you should be able to exclude them from the comparison.
It is different to include, and of course we can say in most countries maybe there are few, so they don't skew the data too much. But what you can say, as you say, is the same. It can be the same with local plus, because they typically, some of if you hire, you can say, a US or a Swiss colleague into Denmark, right? The compensation, the market compensation is much higher than the Danish market. So usually they are way above the salary range on base salary. They maybe get some extra on incentives, and they also have additional key benefits. So they would also skew the data, and they can see. You can say they are local employees like everybody else, right? Just with some extra.
With some extra.
Yeah. Local contracts as well, at least.
Yeah. Okay, so now you announced this, and as you say, the reactions internally, at the very least, have been relatively solid and positive, most over. Yeah. And then externally, you got a lot of attention as well. I guess you've been invited to speak at a lot of events and what have you.
So I need to say no to a few things.
But not to this.
Of course, not to you, Jon. That's clear.
Yeah. So what has the reactions then been, from other places? Do they just want to hear what you're doing and get inspiration? That kind of stuff?
It is kind of get the inspirational journey from and kind of exchange information on how we do it and what are they doing and so on. So these have been many of the requests, and people also want to listen or hear. Yeah, what has been the change management into this? What is the noise level? All these kind of questions, I believe, is big in the market now. So, but and of course, we are happy to share the limitation of our time.
Exactly. That's the one. Yeah. Okay, so now that is gone externally and internally that way around. Next steps then. So you're planning to go external, transparent at some point before the deadline?
Yeah, so the plan right now is April 1st, 2026. We would have, you can say, all the reporting requirements ready. And we would have, you can say, salary ranges, incentives, and key benefits in the job ads. So this is an even bigger change management exercise than the rest, but we have it's our flagship project for Total Rewards, and also getting talent acquisition in our analytics area and so on. So it's all hands on deck to make this really a success, because there are a lot of barriers, also potential if we don't get it right, can also hurt some things, but if we get it right, it can also, you can say, provide a lot of good stories towards Novo Nordisk and how we do it, and maybe set an example for others to follow, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
And before that, you can say we have a plan now for pilot. We also did that for the internal transparency, where we launched it earlier in Switzerland and France, just to see how it went and learn from experiences. And now also for France, the sales affiliate in France, we will go live in September.
Oh, that's exciting.
So that is super exciting. And maybe also in Q4 we'll find a different country. It's not been settled yet, but at least it has been in talks with Japan for maybe in Q4 to also test, you can say, a different culture, a different market outside of EU as well.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
And so have you considered, again, of course, you always have to limit what you can share and not share and whether it's clear or not, but have you considered kind of the width of the ranges? We just for the listeners, and we've seen examples in the US that are very, very different, right? So, and I can name and shame that one because it's so clear. And Netflix does this typical range for a technical person was $90,000 to $900,000. Typical range, not necessarily always, but somewhere in between that. Whereas others are very, very specific. So, what are your reflections around the breadth of it?
Yeah, but standard we have salary ranges. Of course, they can be more or less narrow depending on the market and how volatile it is. Maybe in India we have wider ranges, and in Denmark we have closer ranges because the market is more standardized or not so volatile depending on the company and so on. So the plan is to use those ranges we have in our system so we can automate everything. So it's not, you can say, every talent or recruitment partner that needs to kind of key in with mistakes and everything, or each manager. So we can automate things. And of course, it's not been decided yet, but there could be some areas where it could be discussed whether you manually could adjust it if you see that this is a bulk skill that is maybe lower in the range, then we don't want to overpromise too much. Then it could be that maybe you could take from minimum to the mid-range maximum, so range penetration 66. It's not been decided yet, but that could be a possibility to say, okay, if we know that the typical skill set is based around range penetration 30, then if we provide the full range, then it could also kind of create a expectation for candidates that, okay, then I'll go higher, and then we'll either skew the market data or say no to candidates. Or not skew the market data, skew the internal data. So that's at least some of the thoughts we are looking into.
Yeah, we see plenty of dilemmas in this, and again, you are already in a good place in the sense that you have a range that is clear, it's clearly defined, people know about it, you already officially kind of noted it, and people understand what the 0 and 100 point is. There are many organizations out there that have outliers that are way outside of such a range. Low end, not so much. High end, certainly. Messing up their averages and what have you. And then the dilemma is certainly with, at least in areas where things are moving fast salary-wise in the market, could be areas within IT. You have an internal market that is from X to Z, but if you're going to go out and recruit now, you have to be 10, 15, 20% higher than your current range, something like that. And when people then see that number, and they're kind of saying, this is way more than I get, and I do the same job. So any reflection around that, or do you think you can, with your range, basically live with that situation?
So we benchmark our ranges every year and get solid market data in most countries where we can actually also see it by skill set and see, are there any of these job architecture subfamilies that should be premium or moved back to standard? Or so we have that opportunity every year to move things around. But for transparency, of course, it's also a thought process on maybe to include some kind of disclaimer, because if you have a salary range, but you maybe you get the perfect candidate who has much more in compensation, will the candidate then not apply for that position? Or today, would we then rework the position to do more? Because the candidate comes with much more. So, of course, there needs to be somehow that included as well. So we make sure that we also hire the best candidates, and maybe sometimes if we can get someone with a bigger skill set than what the application or the job ad is actually for, then that could maybe create something better. And sometimes not. There's also sometimes you don't want a Ferrari if you just need an Opel.
I'd rather take it still.
That's right.
Yeah, but and I think this is one of those really, really interesting things, because again, the less structure a company has today, the more often we see that they kind of they would just end up calling it a level higher or something, because then it fits within the range and it's all good. And that's, of course, something that needs to be avoided, unless, of course, they're doing a different job. I mean, obviously, you can get a candidate that simply is so skilled within the area that you're kind of making a new role for it that is on a higher level. Fair enough. But I think that's a bit my fear, that a lot of companies now will, for whatever easy situations or not to mess up their data, then the highest paid people will just somehow be a slightly higher level to make it seem okay.
Yeah, and we have a lot of focus on that. And you can say when you create a position in Novo Nordisk, we actually have kind of an AI tool to guide leaders on the job level, and that positions they created on that job level, and then you do a requisition for a job ad. So it's based on that job level, the requisition, and it's not, the manager cannot just change the job level as such, right? So that needs to go through the TA partner and with a clear explanation why it's needed for a higher level or lower level for that matter, based on that. So it probably happens a few times, but I don't think it's a big problem in our company at least.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to challenge you a bit.
Yeah.
We've not discussed this prior, not prepared you, and I just it was just
good to keep me on my edge.
Yeah. So imagine that you somehow now worked for a 1,000-employee company that had absolutely no structure. There wasn't a history of sharing salaries and whatnot. Like many people out there will be, they're the only rewards person in the company. Maybe there are no rewards people, and it's an HR director listening in. But either way, if you're in that chair, knowing what you know now about the journey that has been done at Novo Nordisk, not having the same resources, and currently there is no job architecture, no structure really, and we're still in April 2025, and the deadline is in June 26. What's your recommendation in terms of how should that kind of journey look from now on? What steps would you kind of take first, etc.?
I think it's important to get executive buy-in. So first, it is to at least create the business case for the structures, for the foundation of everything. Because I've seen many times, if you don't have the executive support, you're typically running around in circles. You're doing a lot of things, and then the scope changes all the time, and some are against it, and you have to fight door by door. So I think it's important to get to kind of pan out the journey you want to be on, and then get the executive buy-in to do that, and make sure you can provide that as input to leaders and HR going forward. Then it is, as I said, it is to start with the basics. I would say it is to get a job architecture foundation included, and it can be much more simple than the one we have created with a big company and using it for a lot of different things, which is kind of foundation for a lot of things we do, all the insights, contracts, everything is actually included on the job architecture. So it's very important, but you can make it very much more simple. And if you have a company with 10 HR people, you probably don't need to have it in talent development, total rewards and mobility, talent acquisition, and so on, right? And then it's okay with a functional structure of human resource management, as an example. And then hopefully you also have kind of a job leveling structure, which can be applied globally, same way, to kind of see what is the value of a position in an organization, so you can actually compare across like for like. And then it is to, I think, build the salary structures maybe more as an HR and manager tool in the beginning, like we also did, and then gradually maybe making it more public if there's an appetite for doing so. So I think this is it, and then maybe some of the less political sensitive areas, put that on the intranet, so employees are aware. So what are the benefits available to a lot of companies, or maybe also have a lot of benefits which is a bit invisible to employees. You spend a lot of money on it, but actually you don't know, employees do not know that it's actually a significant value on top of your base salary, and the same with the incentive structures and so on. Explain how it works and what is actually the structure of it. So that's typically not too sensitive and can easily be shared. So that's at least a good starting point.
Yeah, so start by kind of sharing the policies before you share the actual numbers. Yeah. That's pretty amazing, actually, because we honestly have not discussed this before. I mean, but it is almost step by step the plan that we're also recommending. So we're also saying top management buy-in. If you don't have it, forget about the rest. It doesn't matter. You can make the best plan in the world, but if they don't buy into it, it's just not going to happen. So that really is number one. And then, sometimes we have a step in between where we say, okay, then check your master data. Make sure you have decent data. Otherwise, whatever analysis you're doing, what is it? And then it's the job architecture, having a leveling in place in one way or the other. We're also saying the same. You need to have something. It could be simple in the beginning. You know, in theory, you could be okay with the most basic version just having levels at all. Whether or not you have job families or career streams or whatever fancy stuff we can add on top, but at the very least have a level. Otherwise, what on earth are you comparing against?
Agree.
And I think that is just so key for people listening in that do not currently have a job architecture at all. At the very least, make sure that you have a leveling structure. You just can't use internal titles if that's all you have, because if you have internal titles as the only thing and not linked to any levels, then honestly, I think everyone has had inflation in titles, and some people, you know, just been giving senior in ahead of their title just because they were good negotiators, or they couldn't give a salary increase, so they got a senior instead. But they're actually doing the same.
And it can actually also sometimes create court cases. So I've heard about a company, right, where you can say the laboratory technicians challenged because the technicians in the company had a higher average salary than they did, and there were no job levels for them, which meant that you can say often some of the key technician positions are typically a higher job level, a bit more complex roles, some of them at least. So there would be more at higher job levels. So that makes sense when you do that, and then you can see that, of course, the average salary would be higher for these roles. But actually, when you compare job level to job level, it's approximately the same. And that actually turned into a court case some years back, which is, of course, not what you want.
And we helped with that court case.
Yeah.
And it turned out well for the company.
That's good. But and we implemented job level for that group a few years earlier, which was lucky for us.
Yeah. So okay. So, all right. So we kind of, because what is really, really key to me is that people, with I think a lot of people are more or less alone in rewards, and unfortunately at this point of time maybe have not had the full business case approved by the top management yet. So it really is about building that business case as well. Because if we're saying top management buy-in is number one, then maybe number 0 is how do you get top management buy-in? And that is. I've been reflecting a lot on what we've seen, kind of the pushbacks that we've seen has typically been from the CFOs. And it's not because it's not important to a CFO. This is vastly important. Again, it's the biggest cost of the company for most companies. I mean, it's everything with employee salaries. Is 60, 70, 80% of the cost of very, very many companies. And you're messing with this cost. Somehow you're looking into it. Stuff is happening with it. I don't think any CFO would really like to not know what's happening with their biggest costs.
No.
And whether we have a 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 15% issue to fix. So just getting that message clearly towards the CFO to understand that there is one annual salary review left for most companies now before this takes a full effect. And, if you do nothing, you probably have a 2.5 or 3% or 3.5% budget, something of that nature for your salary increases. And if you have a 6, 7, 8% issue, that doesn't cut it.
No.
And many approve these budgets in October or November or whatever, something like that, which means you need to conclude on these things prior to then. Otherwise, you're messing up that whole cycle. So there is an urgency.
Yes, yes, there is. But it's of course also, when will it take effect? And I assume maybe EU will also have a kind of a lever to say, okay, we cannot fix everything by June 1st. So there might be a possibility if you see a pay gap, you can close some of it a bit later. But of course, there needs to be a plan.
There needs to be a plan.
And there needs to be an explanation to why it is what it is. So we have, and that's also been over several years that we actually worked a lot with line of business. So we have these insights tool, Power BI tool, where you can actually see the gender pay gaps by country, function, everything. And all the leaders have access to it. And we have also a risk analysis tool. So everybody with right now above 10% difference to their benchmark group, so the same type of positions, is actually flagged as a risk case. And then a line of business needs to go in and explain why it is. A lot of them, there's a good reason. It could be that they are newly promoted and maybe also have a pay plan and so on. Or it could be that there's a scarcity in skills or a person being demoted. That's why the person is high and so on. But there's also a lot where there's no explanation, and then the leader is actually more or less forced to act on it. There needs to be an action to correct it. So with this, and actually a lot of buy-in from some senior leaders and a push from them, it's actually also meant that we have closed pay gaps in a lot of countries. So right now this year we had a maximum pay gap in all countries at 10%, both one way or another, and I think almost all countries are in. There are maybe a few above, but there's also some have closed from a 30% pay gap and now to, let's say, 11 or 12%, which is over 2 years, right?
But you're talking unadjusted now?
Yeah. So so it is unadjusted, right? So it is you can say by job level and function in general, right? So
cool. Okay, so right, so just back to we're having all of these companies that do not have the resources you have, and so it kind of the steps. Number one, make sure that you get a business case so that that top management has a buy-in. They get the leveling structure in place. In whatever way you want to do it. You can figure it out yourself. You can buy one of the global consultancies to do so. But if you do that, and that's perfectly fine to do, right? You may be in trouble in terms of actually getting hold of somebody to do it at some point, because they're all fully booked more or less now, and if they're not, there soon will be. So suggest you kind of get started on it, and also if you want simplicity.
There's also it can be a long journey. So it is better to start simple to begin with and just get the foundation and make sure
exactly,
because you always see projects where you believe you can do it at a certain time, but there will always be some barriers or obstacles or something. So often you can see a delay in the timeline and so on. So it's better to get started and do it diligently than kind of rushing it through at the end, which will not be very good.
And I just wanted to reflect on your point of saying that as long as you have a plan in June, you're probably-ish okay. To a large extent, you think you're right. I think but of course the individual will still feel, but hang on, how could this be, right? So they have certain rights to information, all of these things. But I think it's also important to say that it is not really a good excuse to say that you haven't fixed everything before June 2026, because reality, this directive was fully official, in 2021. We've already had 4 years, and 2021 then it already had been negotiated for 4 years. So if this is brand new and news to people now, it is unfortunately these individuals' own mistake in a sense. I think we could officially criticize a bit how information flows from the EU in these kinds of cases, though, because it is not publicly known. If you talk to people outside of HR, outside of rewards is one thing, but outside of HR, very, very few people really know this is coming. So there's, for good reasons as well, CFOs out there that honestly don't know this is hitting them. So they need to know somehow. But as a company, you should be informed that this is happening. And
that's also the responsibility of the CHRO and HR in general to inform the CFO. Of course, they have a lot of things on their mind, and often HR is not the biggest of them. HR matters, so it is of course important that it's brought up and a plan is made. So yeah, you often see this with, as we say in Denmark, kicking the can down the road until it hits you in the face at a certain point in time. So it is of course a typical way for many leaders to think, but it's not right now, and what is it, and how can we do it? But and that's why I think some of the basic things, some of the less dangerous things, get that included. I think everybody, most leaders would like a clear structure, and don't overdo it. Don't start with titles in the beginning, because that's a minefield.
Sensitive area.
So get the structure in place, build the reward structures around that, share information which is less sensitive. So kind of prepare the organization a bit more for transparency.
And I think also an important thing here is to kind of take some of these, concerns out of the way, in a sense, by identifying what the issue actually is. Because, of course, if you have a 9% issue that you need to fix, that's expensive. You don't have that kind of money in your budgets. You may be a low profit margin company, and you simply don't have that money. But then identify then who are the outliers. Of course, sanity check, are they actually on the right level? Don't move people up a level just because they're highly paid. But, but aside from that, double check, are they the right level? And identify these crazy outlier cases. And frankly, sometimes be a bit tough, because there will be cases where people are significantly overpaid for no apparent good reason. Maybe you need to actually do something about that. So it doesn't,
and it can come from a culture, and you can say in some cultures, other organizations have not done this. So it means that when you get candidates in, maybe males expect 10% more than females, because that has been kind of the practice in the companies they come from, which is not right for doing the same job and having the same skill set. So this is something we are really focused on, that it should be fixed.
And I think so. One thing, there are sources for things going wrong. So one thing is obviously, if you recruit people differently, then obviously you keep on importing an issue every time you recruit. So that one is key to fix, and which is again the job ads and the way that you're doing things and the ranges, etc. Could help quite a bit. So that is one. But the other one, I think that where a lot of companies are doing it incorrectly and has done so for years and years, is the promotion piece. You tend to say, you look at the salary the person has instead of the job they're taking, in many companies anyway. And then they look at saying, no, well, we can't give you more than a 5 or 10% increase. We can't afford it. But actually, the alternative is to get an external candidate. And with the external candidate, you're more than willing to pay market rates, which could be 20% higher than the individual. So you kind of randomly say, we would rather pay an external random person, we have no clue whether it's good or bad, this number, but we're not willing to do so to an internal candidate who has proven their worth and is ready for promotion and we know fits the culture, which is completely strange.
And that has also been a focus with us. And there is a narrative some places in the organization that when we that the new you can say new hires outside the organization will get higher salaries, and then people who have been here 10 or 15 years in
18.
In 18. Maybe my boss is listening, so I need a pay raise though. Yeah. But when we look at so that's also the good thing with data and insights and so on. So we have this overview where we can actually look at newcomers coming in the past year and other employees. What is it? And it is kind of a narrative which in most areas is not correct. So it is, of course, managers hear only about 2-3 stories about somebody who's really high paid somewhere and so on, and then they kind of export that to everybody. Yeah. But there are also candidates who come in lower and so on, but they don't include that, or they don't hear about that, or whatever it is. So of course, it's also to kind of break some of that hypothesis that is anchored in some areas and often comes your way. And sometimes if you don't do anything about it and speak with data, then it just becomes bigger and bigger, piles up as a problem. So that's a focus. The other one was a couple of years ago. We actually also introduced that we do not ask candidates for current salaries. So we ask them what they expect in this role of compensation.
Okay, so you're already 50% of the way then at that point in time.
Yeah. So it was a way, and that was also a big change management for many, and a bit of a challenge to get through for some leaders. Some areas it was easier. Again, if you have the top management buy-in, then it's much easier. But and also a lot of concerns about that. But actually, also that turned out to be almost a non-issue. Of course, again, there will always be some issues, but there was issues before as well. With the candidates coming in having a really low salary from a past company, actually really high skills, and then the manager in, let's say, India, but we only go maximum 20% up. And then the person would just be on the lower end of the salary range, or even sometimes below the salary range, which is not what we want to do this time.
But it actually is interesting. We did the same experiment with a small group. This was 6-7 years ago now, when I was heading rewards. We basically looked into total reward statements and did that first internally for people to just see what salary they had. It had nothing to do about ranges or positioning. But then we figured, okay, what if we actually make a total reward statement for candidates? So we tested that, did that for quite a few candidates. Then we didn't even ask about their expectations. We presented, this is the salary package, and by the way, this is the full one. So this is your base, and this is the bonus target that you're having. These are the benefits, this is the total value, and by the way, these are the benefits you're getting that are non-monetary benefits. And it was very positively received. Of course, you need to have some credibility that the range you're coming with or the number you're coming with is relevant. Otherwise, you're a bit of a joke. So it requires that. But once you have that, it seems like the conversation completely changes. And I think that so you have these steps, and then the final step I just wanted to highlight is the policies, because we've seen a couple of cases with companies that has either gotten hold of the whole budget to fix their pay gap issue, they fixed it. But if they didn't do, number one, if they didn't do change management with their managers, there's still the same biases that they had that led to the original issue. And if they didn't change their policies, again, there's a reason they have the issue they have. So if you don't change and look into your policies and your behavior and your biases, you're probably going to end up the same place.
And we can also see that in a few countries that you need to follow up year on year or even quarter by quarter that it's the data looks good, because if you lose it, so we've seen that for a few countries where they actually got really low on gender pay gap, maybe down to 3 or 4%, but then they kind of lost track of of that part because now we're good, and then you lose some people and you hire some people in, and then the next year it's a couple of years after it's 7 or 8%. So it needs a constant focus, and keep the managers on to explain why we're doing this, what is the value, what is the reason we want to do this in Novo Nordisk, and have that respectful way of not looking at genders as a difference in market pay.
Cool. All right, I think we've been nerding around quite a bit now, Keld. So I don't think there is much more to cover here. We could just keep on digging, but I think to some extent, I just really want to say thank you for both for you sharing this so openly, but also honestly to Novo Nordisk for being a lead in this and taking a lead, actively sharing that you're taking a lead. And thereby inspiring others that have slightly smaller rewards teams as well. But I think that is what's needed. We need kind of a lighthouse or two to really show we're doing this. We're doing it not because we have to. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. It fits the company culture, all of these things. And we're doing it globally, even though we don't have to. I think that's exactly the kind of, not just statements, but showing it. We've heard others talk about it, but they haven't actually shared it, and then the value isn't the same. No. But you're actually sharing it. So we're very much looking forward to some of the experiments. Let's just call them that for now. With let's see if it's France and whatever Japan, and see how that pins out. That will be highly interesting to see how that develops and what reactions you get.
That sounds good.
Yeah,
I'm happy to be here and happy to share my story and. Let's keep connected.
Very good.
To share in your network group or whatever you need.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Keld.
Thank you very much.
Huge pleasure.
Yeah, but thank you very much.
Thank you.